I'm Lily. On Christmas Eve, my mother squeezed my wrist so hard my fingers went numb, and whispered, "Stay quiet. Whatever happens, don't you speak." A second later, the church lights flared, the choir rose, and the director's voice rang through the sanctuary. "Lily Harper, please come forward." My stomach dropped, because I hadn't auditioned. I hadn't even been allowed to sing in months. And my mother, my own mother, looked at me like I'd just stepped on a landmine she'd buried. Christmas Eve at St. Agnes Church always smelled like cinnamon and pine-like. The world could be gentle if you just believed hard enough. People wore their best coats and their brightest smiles. They hugged too tight, like warmth could cover whatever was rotting underneath. That night, my mother and I sat in the third pew from the front, close enough to be seen, far enough to avoid attention. She had insisted on that exact spot. "Remember," she said without looking at me, her lipstick perfect, her hair pinned in a neat twist like a promise. "No matter what, you stay quiet." "Mom, why are you acting like this?" I whispered. Her eyes stayed fixed on the altar. "Because you don't understand what's at stake." I wanted to say I understood more than she thought. I understood the way she'd been avoiding my questions since September. I understood the way my name had disappeared from the choir roster without explanation. I understood how she flinched whenever Ms. Rachel Benton, the choir director, tried to talk to me after service. But my mother didn't want understanding. She wanted obedience. The organ began, deep and solemn. Choir members filed in, candles trembling in their hands. Their voices floated upward like prayers. I used to be among them. I used to feel like the music was the only place I could be honest. Now I sat silent, swallowing the notes like stones. My mother's fingernails pressed into my palm. "Don't," she mouthed when I leaned forward to watch. Then between one hymn and the next, Miss Benton stepped up to the microphone. She adjusted her glasses, glanced down at a sheet of paper, and smiled like someone holding a surprise. "Before we continue," she said warmly, "we have a special moment this evening, a tradition, you might say one we've neglected for too long." The sanctuary hummed with curiosity. Ms. Benton's eyes searched the pews. I felt them land on me like a spotlight. "Lily Harper," she said clearly, "please come forward." Everything in me froze. My mother's face turned the color of ash. I didn't stand. I couldn't. My legs had forgotten how. Ms. Benton tried again, gentler. "Lily, sweetheart, come on." A few heads turned, then more. The whole church seemed to swivel in my direction. My mother leaned in, voice sharp as glass. "Sit down." My throat tightened. "Mom, why?" "Because if you go up there," she hissed, "you'll ruin everything." That word, everything, hit me like a slap. I'd spent months watching her, everything, swallow my life, piece by piece. I looked at the choir, at the candles, at Miss Benton's hopeful expression. I looked at my mother's grip on my arm, her nails digging crescents into my skin. Then I stood. My mother's hand shot out, trying to yank me back, but I slipped free like I'd been practicing for years. I walked up the aisle with my heart pounding so hard, I thought the pews might shake. The closer I got to the front, the more I could feel the weight of the room. Expectation, curiosity, something sharper underneath. Miss Benton met me at the steps and squeezed my hands. Her palms were warm, steady. "Thank you," she whispered. "I'm proud of you." I blinked. "For what?" She motioned toward the choir. "For being brave enough to be seen." I turned, and that's when I saw Timothy Caldwell, my stepfather, standing near the side aisle, his posture stiff. He wasn't supposed to be there. He never came to church unless there was a camera involved. And beside him stood Pastor Glenn, smiling too wide. Something inside me whispered, "This isn't about music." Ms. Benton cleared her throat and lifted her microphone again. "Tonight," she announced, "we celebrate not only the birth of hope, but the return of a voice that was wrongfully silenced." Wrongfully silenced. Not my mother's head snapped up. Ms. Benton continued, "Many of you remember Lily's solo last year. Her voice brought us to tears. This year, she was removed from the choir without explanation." A ripple ran through the congregation. People murmured. Eyes flicked toward my mother. My stomach churned. I hadn't known Ms. Benton would say it out loud. Ms. Benton's voice turned firm. "I asked for a reason. I was told, it's a family decision. But I also received something else." She raised an envelope. My breath caught. Ms. Benton held it like evidence. A letter that was sent to me from someone claiming to represent Lily's best interests. It asked me politely, of course, to keep Lily off the Christmas program, to prevent her from being noticed this season. She paused. I didn't agree. The room went so silent I could hear the wax dripping from the choir candles. My mother stood abruptly, her heels clicking like warning shots. Rachel, this is inappropriate. Miss Benton didn't even look at her. What's inappropriate, she said, is hiding the truth behind a child's silence. My hands began to tremble. I didn't know what truth she meant, but I could feel it gathering like a storm. Ms. Benton turned to me, her expression softer. Lily, do you want to tell them why you were asked to stay quiet? Every muscle in my body locked. I glanced at my mother. Her eyes were pleading, panicked, almost desperate. Ethan's jaw clenched. Pastor Glenn shifted uncomfortably, and suddenly, all the months of confusion and humiliation made sense in a way that made me dizzy, because this wasn't about my singing, it was about what my singing could reveal. I took the microphone from Ms. Benton, and my voice came out smaller than I wanted. I don't know, I admitted. I was told I was being distracting, that I needed to focus on school. A bitter laugh escaped me, but I was on a roll. I applied for scholarships. I did everything right. The room held its breath. I swallowed, and still, my name vanished. My mother's voice cracked. Lily, please, we'll talk at home. At home. That was where she always took the truth, locked it in a room, and told me it was safer there. But the church wasn't home. It was public. It was bright. It was full of witnesses. And suddenly I realized something. My mother feared witnesses, more than she feared hurting me. Ms. Benton stepped closer, her voice low. Lily, do you remember the Caldwell Foundation scholarship? Of course I did. It was the scholarship everyone whispered about, the one that could cover tuition, housing, music programs, everything. The scholarship funded by Ethan's wealthy family, awarded every year during the Christmas Eve service as part of their charity tradition. Ms. Benton's eyes shone. You were nominated. My heart slammed into my ribs. I was what? You were nominated, she repeated, louder now. By me, by your teachers, by 3 community leaders. Your application was outstanding. The congregation erupted into murmurs. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. Ethan's face turned hard, like marble. And, Miss Benton said, voice steady, you were approved. Approved. The word hit me like sunlight after a long winter. I stared at her. Then why didn't I? Ms. Benton lifted the envelope again. Because someone intervened. My mother stepped forward, voice shaking. Rachel, you don't understand. Ethan snapped. Don't. The single word cracked through the sanctuary. That was when I truly saw him not as my stepfather, who bought expensive gifts and posed for photos, but as a man who believed he could control outcomes like he controlled money. Pastor Glenn hurried toward the microphone. Forced smile plastered on. Let's remember the spirit of Christmas. This isn't the time. Ms. Benton cut him off. Actually, Pastor, it's the perfect time. She turned to the congregation. The Caldwell Foundation scholarship is supposed to go to a student chosen for talent and need, but I discovered records donor communications showing pressure to replace Lily with someone else. My mouth went dry. Replace me with who? Ms. Benton looked toward the front row where Vanessa Caldwell sat. Ethan's niece. Perfect hair, perfect pearls, perfect smile that now trembled at the edges. Vanessa's eyes widened. No, Ethan's voice was cold. Rachel stopped, but the room was already awake. Ms. Benton spoke carefully, like she was placing glass on a table. The scholarship committee was instructed to deny Lily, despite her approval, and award the scholarship to Vanessa. Gasps. Vanessa's face went bright red. That's not true. Miss Benton nodded once. It is. Then she turned to me. And the reason they wanted you silent is because if you sang, if you stood where people could see you, people might ask why the best singer in our choir wasn't receiving the scholarship she earned. My knees nearly buckled. All this time, I thought I was being punished for something I couldn't name, but it wasn't punishment, it was theft. And the worst part, my mother had helped them do it. I turned slowly to her. Mom, tears pooled in her eyes. Lily, please, I was trying to protect you. Protect me from what? My voice rose, breaking. From winning, from being noticed, from having a future. Ethan stepped forward, his smile returning like a mask. This is a misunderstanding. Lily is emotional. Rachel has always been dramatic. Ms. Benton held up her phone. I have emails. I have the letter. I have the committee's original approval. Pastor Glenn's hands fluttered. Let's not do this publicly. But the public part was the point. My mother had always depended on private rooms to keep secrets safe. I stared at Ethan. You stole my scholarship. He laughed softly, like I'd said something adorable. Lily, scholarships are complicated. You don't understand how donations are complicated. You don't understand how donations don't, I said. and I was shocked by the steadiness in my own voice. Because suddenly, I did understand. I understood that my talent was inconvenient. My future didn't fit into their plan. I faced the congregation again, the microphone warm in my hand. My heart pounded, but the fear was changing shape, becoming something sharper. I want to say something, I began, voice trembling only slightly. For months, I thought I'd done something wrong. I thought maybe I wasn't good enough. Maybe I was too much. I glanced at my mother. I was told to be quiet. A hush fell. And tonight, I continued. I realized quiet is how people like Ethan get away with things. Ethan's eyes narrowed. Ms. Benton nodded at me, encouraging. I took a deep breath. So I'm not going to be quiet anymore. My mother sobbed. Lily, I loved you, I said, voice cracking. I still do, but you let them take something from me. You let them make me small so you could keep your life comfortable. She shook her head violently. He said he'd leave us if I didn't. He said he'd ruin us. And what about ruining me? I demanded. Was that easier? The room felt like it was holding its breath with me. Every person suddenly aware that this wasn't just gossip. This was a girl learning her worth out loud. Ms. Benton leaned in. Lily, would you like to sing? I looked at the choir. Their faces were gentle, supportive. The candles flickered like tiny defiant flames. I nodded. Ms. Benton signaled the pianist. The first chords filled the sanctuary, soft, familiar, and I sang. Not to be perfect, not to be polite, not to prove anything to Ethan or Pastor Glenn. I sang because my voice was mine. Halfway through, I saw faces in the congregation change, eyes widening, hands lifting to mouths, tears spilling without permission. I saw Vanessa staring at the floor like it might swallow her. I saw Pastor Glenn's smile collapse completely. And I saw my mother kneeling in the pew, crying like she'd finally realized silence wasn't safety. When the final note faded, the church went still for a heartbeat. Then applause erupted. Messy. UNCONTAINABLE. Benton stepped back to the microphone. Now, she said, I'd like the scholarship committee to join me. 3 people rose from the side pews, looking grim. One of them, Mrs. Adler, a retired teacher, cleared her throat. There's been misconduct. Ethan's voice snapped. This is absurd. Mrs. Adler didn't flinch. The Caldwell Foundation scholarship will be awarded correctly. She turned to me, eyes kind. Lily Harper, please accept. A man handed me a certificate. My hands shook as I took it. The paper felt heavier than it should, like it carried not only money, but justice. Ethan stepped forward, faced furious. You can't do this. Ms. Benton lifted her phone again. We already contacted the foundation's board. They're here tonight. 2 men in suits stood near the back, watching Ethan with expressions that promised consequences. Pastor Glenn tried to speak, but his voice failed. For the first time in my life, the powerful people in the room weren't the loudest. I was. Ethan's face tightened as if he might explode. Then he spun and stormed down the aisle, Vanessa scrambling after him. My mother stayed frozen, still crying. I walked down from the altar steps and stopped in front of her pew. For a moment, I thought she'd reach for my hand like she used to when I was little, when she was still just my mom, not someone caught in a man's shadow. But she didn't. She whispered, I'm sorry. I stared at her, my chest aching. I believe you, but sorry doesn't give me those months back. Her shoulders shook. I leaned closer, lowering my voice so only she could hear. You told me to stay quiet, I said, so you could keep your life. I held up the certificate. But my life is mine, and I'm done shrinking it for anyone. That was the revenge, not screaming, not slamming doors, just refusing to be made small again. After service, people surrounded me, teachers, neighbors, strangers who suddenly remembered my name. Ms. Benton hugged me so tightly I could barely breathe. You did it, she whispered. No, I said, voice thick. You didn't let them bury me. Outside, snow began to fall in soft sheets, blanketing the church steps like a clean beginning. My mother stood behind me, alone. She didn't come closer. Maybe she knew she'd lost the right. Weeks later, Ethan's name was quietly removed from several committees. Donations were restructured. Pastor Glenn announced an unexpected sabbatical. People said it was for health reasons, but the whispers in town told a different story. And my mother, she moved into a small apartment across town. She started working extra shifts. For the first time, she had to face life without Ethan's money, smoothing the edges. Sometimes, she called. Sometimes I answered. Healing isn't a straight line. It's a song you learn slowly, note by note. But I went back to choir. And the next Christmas Eve, when the candles lit and the organ swelled, I walked to the front. without anyone telling me to stay quiet, because my voice wasn't a problem. It was the proof that I was still here. If this story hit you, you've ever been told to stay quiet so someone else could stay comfortable, take a second to like this video and subscribe for more long-form revenge stories with real emotional payoffs. And tell me in the comments, what would you have done in Lily's place? Would you forgive or walk away for good?